Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up with all things hip hop music and culture that happened throughout the week. Shout out to the Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. The link is in the description of this episode if you would like to find out about that. And also, if you would like to read my book, or at least the first 3 chapters of my book, called Experience Hip Hop, I have been unleashing a chapter every so often on my Substack. That's a place where writers write. So you can check it out. First 3 chapters about Ice Cube's death certificate, Slick Rick's The Great Adventures of Slick Rick, almost forgot, and Nas's Illmatic, not in that order. So check it out. The book is all about my experience with these albums at different points in my life. How I acquired them, how I heard them, where I was at in my life at that point in time. So it's a lot there to learn, about. I got stuff dropped in the background to to learn about my experience. And for someone like yourself, it just might be a nice trip down nostalgia memory lane for yourself. Or maybe you're just curious to know what other hip hop fans, such as myself, think about some of these classic albums. I have like 10 chapters, so we've only done 3. So check it out. Link is in the description of this episode. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, and I'm not going to front y'all. It has been a long week, and that is the only source that I've used this week for news. So without further ado, let's get right into the business. So Eminem has a brand new album slated to release soon, entitled The Death of Slim Shady. I talked about it on this podcast in detail. If you go back maybe 2 episodes, you'll find an episode where I kind of talk about it. You can learn more about it. But he just released the first single from this album, entitled Houdini. And if you listen to the name of the album, right, The Death of Slim Shady, it seems like it's going to be a concept album, and I'm assuming very heavy on the concept, on the conceptual side of things, which is probably what I hope for more than giving something a title, having a single and a video tied to it, and then you listen to the rest of the album, it's just a bunch of other records, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But I think at this point in Eminem's career, it wouldn't be bad for him not to make a concept album. Not only skits that play into the concept, but also the music itself, a la one of the greatest concept albums in hip-hop history. And maybe I'll do like a top concept albums in hip-hop, but this one in particular, and people who know me, Sticky Fingers, Black Trash, the autobiography of Kurt Jones. Not only was it a dope hip-hop album, but just as a concept, it was like one big story with detail, right? Again, not just here's the concept kind of thing. And, then a bunch of songs. No, literally everything tied into everything. So we're kind of hoping for that. This first song, my impressions, I'll say, off this Eminem single, Houdini, I listened to it first, woke up in the morning, went to Apple, just to see what was new. I was like, oh yeah, right. Eminem's song comes out. So I listened to it first. And I'm not even gonna hold y'all. I'm an Eminem fan, but the Slim Shady, goofy, guess who's back? That dude, like, for me, it ended with that song, which I think that song was on the Eminem show, or maybe that was on Marshall Mathers. But by the time of the Eminem show, I was kind of done with that side of Eminem. Now, I don't mind it on the albums because he's funny. You know, he can be very funny, but I think when it came to the goofy videos and the song, the formula got old. Like I talked about Eminem's career a while back. Did I do a discography thing? Yeah, I think I did a tier list of Eminem. And I just felt like after the Eminem show was his peak, and then he tried to come back, I think it was Curtain Call, and it was just such a rehash of what he had done and what he had done that was successful at his highest point, which was the Eminem show, that it was literally just a rehash of that. And I get it, Curtain Call. It's the Eminem show. It's the follow-up. It's supposed to sound like that, but it just felt too much like it to the point where it didn't have its own identity, or it wasn't an extension of the Eminem show. It was just another Eminem album, and the goofiness just got old for me. And then I remember when he came back with Relapse, and it was like Slim Shady was back, but it was more on the I don't know, like this horrorcore serial killer kind of vibe. And I messed with it like that. I'm like, yo, yeah, do that. If you're gonna do Slim Shady, do that now. Don't do the goofy stuff, dissing pop stars. So when I heard Houdini, I almost turned it off because I was like, oh, they doing this. Now, there's one thing I did say to people ever since Eminem returned with a good album, which I think was Relapse. He had gotten to a point where he would like hit, miss, hit, miss, hit, miss with albums. And he was kind of like on that trail. Now, his last album, Murdered to Die By, I thought it was dope. And I even like the deluxe version even better. I thought that album was dope. I felt like, yo, this is the pocket Eminem needs to stay in. This album, this is the blueprint if you're going to continue to make music. Didn't contain, the Guess Who's Back kind of Slim Shady, even though Slim Shady was in there. It just wasn't that. This song made me feel like now we about to get the Whack album. But then I went ahead and listened to it, and I'm like, all right, I get it. I get it. It's the death of Slim Shady. I mean, Slim Shady got to be on here. And, I get it. But this ain't I don't know what the whole album sounds like. So I'm going to reserve my judgment. But the first single ain't doing it for me. Not going to make the playlist, right? Some people would say they ain't playing it in the hood. Whatever, man. I've seen dudes on YouTube playing it and they live in the hood. I'm sorry. Sorry if that hurts you. But then I was like, well, let me watch the video just to see. And when I watched the video made me pay more attention to the lyrics. And then I had an aha moment like, okay, I see. So essentially, and this goes for all you people who are passing judgment just because you like to argue on Twitter, right? Whether it's negative or positive, you just like arguing. You're not really paying attention to the details. When I listened to the record without any real context and just knowing this wasn't the M I wanted to hear, I was just kind of like, yeah, on it. When I watched the video and it made sense, I was like, oh, right, okay, Death of Slim Shady. There's the old Eminem. In the video, he has the DH Slim Shady coming from 2002 into the future and seeing all this weird stuff going on. And the older Eminem wants to end Dr. Dre. They want to stop him because that Eminem is just unhinged. So in the video, and this ain't no spoiler, it ain't no movie, it ain't the Matrix 5, but the old Eminem and the new Eminem merges, which tells me metaphorically by just watching it in some of the bars that he's going to basically upset a lot of people, right? There's already some controversial R. Kelly bars in there. There's already some controversial Megan Thee Stallion bars in there. To me, nothing crazy, like clever lines, but I mean, I don't think there should be any big deal about it. He mentions getting canceled and all this stuff. So I think what he's going to do is try to make one last album where he does some of those older things. He says some of those older things he used to say where he really didn't care. And I think, like, I always go to see what the reaction is on social media, not just Twitter, but everywhere, including Reddit. And I saw some people saying, "Yo, why he still rapping like this?" You know what I'm saying? Like he hasn't matured, which is crazy to say. If you did you not hear Recovery? Like, yeah, he already matured. But this is entertainment, and this is what he does. And there's a certain section of fans who miss Slim Shady, right? Because that's the Eminem they know. They don't want the black beard. I don't do drugs no more. I'll rhyme here and there. I'm politically correct, and they kind of miss Slim Shady. So that's what this video was for. I thought the video was fun. I think it made me look at the record in a better light. Still not gonna make my playlist because honestly, the video is what's entertaining about the song to me. And now that I understand the concept of the album, I just hope again that the concept doesn't only exist within the frame of this song and then we just get these other records with it. Like, let's go down that rabbit hole of what Slim Shady could and couldn't say. Let's keep that battle going of old Eminem and new Eminem battling. Let's keep the concept going, because if you just make songs to upset people like he used to do, then it's just not going to be good for him at this point in his career, especially today. But in a lot of ways, he still gets to have that social commentary that he would have had back in the days, but he's policing himself. So it's one of those things where you either going to be with it or you're not, because it's sort of like it's a concept. And I'll just tell you right now, if you never liked Eminem, but you know that he's nice, you're not gonna like this record, because this record ain't really about bars. There's some bars in there, but it ain't really about being the best rapper. It's really for the fans who like Slim Shady, who like the silly stuff that he did. Now, I ain't gonna front, when the first album came out, um, it wasn't My Name Is, right? I liked it because I thought his lyrics were funny to me and it was playful. And I'll just say this, right? I know there's a lot of hip hop police on the internet, regular dudes. I know there's a lot of people where if you show any admiration for what they hate, you're a stan, which is not true. You can be a fan like myself and still criticize some of your favorite artists when you don't like something. This song just doesn't really do it for me. Maybe within the context of an album, well, or maybe I will skip it. Who knows? But it is what it is. And it's not a statement on what his career has been and what people recognize him as. Again, Nas for me doesn't move up to he's close. He doesn't move up to the GOAT, the top GOAT, just because of his Hit Boy run, which was phenomenal, because I can't all of a sudden forget why I chose LL Cool J as the GOAT. Because there's just certain boxes that LL Cool J checks that Nas doesn't check. You know, it's just what it is. But there's some that, Nas is right there with LL. So I kind of feel like when it comes to people like Eminem who are rapping at the age they're rapping and they have this history, if you don't like it, don't watch it. If you on social media and you don't want to see it pop up on your timeline, you can mute certain words. And trust me, it works like a charm. Sometimes I forget what I muted. And I'm like, damn, why I'm not seeing Lil Yachty's stuff. He retired. Like, oh, I muted it. I didn't mute him. But you know what I'm saying? So if you don't like something, it's cool to express it. Absolutely. But I see dudes and all on to not just dudes, but hip hop fans on social media all the time, just saying how much they don't like something, but I just really watched you all day tweet about it. I don't understand that kind of energy. Who has that kind of time? So I'm curious to see what this new album, The Death of Slim Shady, is going to be. But also at the same token, I am cautiously optimistic because I thought the Marshall Mathers LP2 was going to be dope, and it was not. It was whack. So who knows what we're going to get. Hopefully it's something dope, but we shall see. But no cheat codes for anybody who I really like, because I gotta like the songs. Like, I can't just say I like it because I've been a fan. I gotta like it. So there you have it. Drake reference tracks have been popping up all over the place. Party Next Door. Uh, we all know Quentin Miller, Lil Yachty, a couple other dudes I've never heard of. All of these reference tracks for songs like Mob Ties, um, for Drake, and people are doing things like playing the reference and then playing the song. Just so you know that it's not like, oh, it's a reference and he took pieces, but then Drake crafted it. No, he just rehearsed the reference for his album. That's ghostwriting, y'all. It's ghostwriting. That's what it is. Um, and ironically, a lot of what's come out is all on the same album. And more ironic than that, it's the one Drake album that I do not like at all, which is Scorpion. It's the album where I think he rapped the most on that album. You got ghostwriters. But the other thing, like I said on social media, was damn. We always hear reference tracks from the songs that I never looked at Drake as, yo, he could spit. Like, none of these reference tracks are songs where I felt like he could rhyme on those records. Like, they're not. They were just like the throwaway, the new wave, just real basic, most basic records and lyrics ever. Those are the ones with the reference tracks. So it just seems weird to me because I'm like, all right, well, does he not write those, but when it's time to like battle, or or anything like Duppy Freestyle or 0 to 100, is that Drake using his pen? Because if that's the case, then he's very capable of writing raps. He just, I guess, doesn't have time to make the simpleton stuff, so he just gets the people who do that already, and he pay them, and then he makes the record. And on social media, I asked the question, like, does it matter if Drake is getting reference tracks? Do people feel like, yo, you say you're a rapper, you the best, you're not supposed to have a ghostwriter? Or like I'm saying, and I'm not saying either or. I feel like if you rap and you talk about you the best, you should write your stuff. But just to play devil's advocate, I mean, what if it's just the ABC 1 2 3 records? Does anybody cares? Did you ever view that as a level of skill when you heard any of those records? Now, to me, that makes the case of, then why it's so hard for you not to write them, Drake? So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But at the same time, I think this is the thing. Because, again, when these things happen, the people who love to argue on social media, especially Twitter, tend to go in and everybody's pulling up YouTube videos as evidence, and or they just go back and forth, and then they start defining what the words mean. Reference track. Let's just talk about that before we move on. I don't know of a case, only because we wouldn't know unless we just found it, of a case where somebody did a reference track for you, word for word with hook, and you repeated it word for word with hook, and then called it a collaboration. You're a performer in that instance. And this person is the writer because you're not contributing to the writing process because you're just performing the lyrics based off the reference track. So that person wrote it. Lil Yachty wrote that record. End of discussion. Some people even compare Drake, like, well, even Michael Jackson had writers. Of course, he had writers because Michael Jackson wasn't a writer. He also wasn't a hip hop artist where writing your own lyrics is like a part of your superpower. That stuff don't cross over into pop, and because that's been happening since the beginning of time. Every singer is not a writer. It's just not how it works. Some people could just sing and perform well, and then they go and look for producers who not only bring them the music, but also bring them the lyrics. Not everybody does that. Michael Jackson was as popular as he was because if Ron Tipperton is giving you here's a single for you to sing, and it's all about monsters, ghouls, and goblins. I'm just describing monsters in the corniest way when you read it. But then Michael Jackson turns that into a hit. Okay? Then nobody's like, that's an incredible. Oh, those lyrics, it's close to midnight and something's lurking in the dark. Man, those lyrics. No, it's what Mike did with the lyrics. When you listen to the Drake reference track, yeah, it's slightly better than Yachty performing this, but Yachty wrote it. And if the fans dig the lyrics and what's being said, then the performance is not doing it. It's just they think it's coming from Drake, and Yachty just wrote the perfect words. Now, people talked about collaborative writers. It happens all the time, blah, 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 blah. That's not what's happening with Drake with these particular records. He's performing the records. He's not a part of the writing process when you're taking everything verbatim from the reference. A la, what is it? Queen Bee, Little Kim's record, where Biggie wrote her verse and did a reference track. Little Kim performed that. She didn't write that joint unless they sat down and wrote it and Big went in the booth. Like if they sat down and wrote it together and Big went in the booth and said, this is how you should say all of this, and here's a reference so you can get the cadence down, that's a little bit different. And then there are the people who are there who have ideas. You may write something and they may feel like, yo, you should say that line is dope, but I'm not getting the impact from that line. So you should say it with this inflection, or maybe drop this word out because it still means that. Those are co-writers as well. But you know what they are in that instance? Editors. If we really want to talk about it, right? They're just helping to fine tune what you're doing. That's it. Use the concept, the idea, the energy is still yours. We're going to try to make it a hit. So sometimes you need another mind to do that. And then there are the people who just already understand how everything should work, and they just get in with a producer and they go. So the recording process isn't one size fits all. The writing process isn't one size fits all. Most MCs typically are writing their own records from the gate, unless you a dope MC. You had this hot record, but now we're making your album. You're struggling to have different content. As a business, you might want to bring somebody in there to help polish what's there and ideas. Sometimes it just sets that writer on the right path, and then they can go. So I think the problem with hip hop is, and we're not going to stay there too much longer because we got one more topic. And these episodes have been long the last couple of weeks, and I'm sorry. But what typically happens is people feel like in hip hop, everything is no. You have to write your own lyrics. You have to make the entire beat. Like it just everybody has to be that. But everybody's not that. Just like everybody in the soul music situation wasn't Stevie Wonder or Marvin Gaye or even somebody like Lionel Richie who wrote like and produced. There are not many people like that that can sit there and write hit records and produce hit records all by themselves, don't really need any help. Those people who do that typically earn it because they put out so much great music. Nobody should mess with it. So we're gonna stand back and let them cook. But when you got a long career and you've probably done that for 3 albums straight and singles and features and stuff like that, and now you're so busy, you're probably so much more busy. And I'm talking about people who blow up. So don't really compare somebody who's able to buy a bunch of chains and a whip and a decent house to somebody who's mega rich. And the demand for them beyond the music is so crazy that they wouldn't be able to create more music, but that's their main revenue stream, so they have to keep cooking. Like, trust me, if you doing a bunch of whatever outside of making music and now you gotta go to the studio, you're not, and you're probably tired, you might want to sleep, you might want to eat. It may sound good to be like, nah, we just soldiered it out. And nah, that nobody's doing that for a career. You only doing that if you're on a level where everything, all the stakes are much lower and you have way more time to be creative. So I don't know. I think in a lot of ways, I never really looked at Drake as one of the best rappers. I never thought he was whack. I think it is kind of trash that even you can't even rank these simpleton records, but it's still a business. And I think a lot of people don't want to hear it's a business part while they sit there and make business transactions for some of their favorite artists. But they don't want to talk about the business. But it is a business. The music is business. You're paying for it unless you choose to do it for free. And none of them are going to do that. So reference tracks are reference tracks, but we show me a reference track of somebody who I had no idea wasn't writing all their music. Like show me like Hit Boy references, like, yeah, I wrote the whole Magic album. Nas just did this. Then my mind would be blown. But Drake and those records, I'm like, I don't care. He never ranked like that for me on the hip hop side. I kind of mess with all the other stuff he does, all the pop stuff, to be honest. So there you have it. And lastly, so Ice Cube said this more than once, and I've listened because in the past we don't get this kind of access that we get now with social media. So I wanted to hear him out. And he said that his song, his diss record, No Vaseline, off the Death Certificate album, is the greatest hip hop diss record of all time. And he said this a while back when people brought it up and questioned it. And even now with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake battle, it's kind of resurfaced. And he said it again. And he's like, yo, I don't care what anybody says. That's me by myself going at one of the largest groups in hip hop, that was super hot at the time that I left all by myself. And I'm battling 4 dudes and their manager, basically. Who else did that? And that's the argument I always make. I'm like, you can't just sweep No Vaseline under the rug and just say it's Ether or what Kendrick did. Like, you can't. I'm surprised that people forget The Bridge is Over. The Bridge is Over was Ether before Ether. Do not be mistaken. It was No Vaseline before No Vaseline. Do not be mistaken. Now, I think, honestly, if I had to say what record is the greatest diss record of all time, it has to go beyond just bars. It has to go beyond just a dope beat. It has to go beyond um well, maybe just those things. Because I think the great diss records do more than just have dope lyrics and beats. I think it's all about the aftermath. What happened after this record released? What changed? If you can shift the culture, some people say that phrase because it sounds cool. You shifted the culture, but they don't really have a definition for what that means. I do. Let's just go over the four of them, right? The ones that typically get mentioned, or maybe a little bit more, but that's it. No Vaseline. So what happened to NWA after that? Well, there wasn't an answer really, because NWA started dissing Ice Cube prior to this diss on their second album. Then Death Certificate came out, and NWA never released another album. Now, is Ice Cube and this song responsible for that? In some ways. Because now, not only was it a dope record, but Ice Cube pointed out how bad the record deals was. And it was embarrassing to some of those guys because now they're starting to question Easy. Now, Ren never left Easy. But Dr. Dre was like, you know what? Cube might be right. He's right. You know what I'm saying? So that's the impact on your opponent, not the people, because all these records were big with the people, but on your opponent. So in a lot of ways, he kind of broke up the group forever by saying it's possible to be large without NWA and make money and be your own man. The bridge is over. Well, the bridge is over is similar to what 50 Cent did to Ja Rule. MC Shan and Ja Rule didn't disappear after, crazy diss records. But what did happen is people stopped caring about them. Now, that's kind of crazy because people didn't stop caring about NWA when Ice Cube dissed them. But people started to act like they didn't like Ja Rule ever. People was acting like they never liked Shan. And Shan put out a good album after that, but in the psyche of the hip hop public, but they whack. So why would I even listen to him? So that's an impact also. Hit him up with Tupac. This didn't have the impact that I think some people think it did because it was such a scathing diss that it was more funny and like, oh, what do you say? Blah, blah, blah. But it didn't stop Big from being dope. It didn't change people's minds about Big. It just set it off. But it was never an exchange between the two, or at least a back and forth. Like his Tupac's diss record and his Big's answer. So it's almost like an incomplete battle, right? So you don't really count that. And last two, Ether. When Ether dropped, I'll tell you like this. Before Ether, I was living in Baltimore and I'm from New York. And obviously I went home frequently. From Baltimore to New York, you could tell that Jay-Z was the dominant force in hip hop, especially hip hop radio. And when Ether came out, it shifted. People didn't hate Jay-Z, but they just stopped talking about him for that moment and started talking more about Nas. And it made Jay-Z look bad. Like, you thought you could do that to him? It was embarrassing on the highest level. Now, when Jay-Z finally came back with an album, we still checked for it. So people still cared. And, Jay-Z was still in business. But his career, his status took a major hit because he was huge. He was like the king. And it was like, you can beat everybody but him. And that's just what it was. And it's similar with Kendrick Lamar. Now, with this battle, it's a little bit different because it's more of the rollout is what's crazy with the songs, with the Easter eggs for each song, the answer response. It's kind of like the rollout is almost better than all of the songs, even though all the songs are dope. I don't feel, even though this is young, I don't feel like Drake's career is over at all. At all. I don't feel like Drake is going out of business anytime soon. But I do feel, I mean, like as far as his image, but I do feel like his image has taken a major hit because now when you talk about who's better, you sound crazy trying to say Drake's better than Kendrick because now we have more than enough proof to say no, he's not. We just do. And that's just not the biggest impact. So I think at the end of the day, when you talk about greatest diss records, I think you can't choose one. I know I went through all of that just to say that, but I'm sorry. The circumstances are so different, so unique to the situations that we can't really say Ice Cube's is better than everybody else because Ice Cube and Nas's Ether take a similar road with the lyrics themselves, right? Like a dissection. But Kendrick's dissection is on a whole nother level because it's not just talking about him, it's like revealing things about him, personal things, true or not, that also crept into the minds of folks. So at the end of the day, yeah, it's kind of a cop out, not for me to say which one is the best, but that's because I don't know. I can't really call it. But what do you think? Do you think Ice Cube has a point? No Vaseline is the greatest diss record of all time because of what he stated? Leave your comments in the comment section below. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. And please know the audio version of this podcast is available everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, all of that. All you got to do is search for the words Hip Hop Now Podcast, subscribe, and stay locked into weekly hip hop content. On the YouTube channel, though, we are on the road to 500 subscribers. Right now, we're at like 435, something like that. So not much far to go, but still got to get there. So if you enjoy this content, subscribe, like, comment, because I read the comments. But more importantly, share it with people you know would also enjoy this kind of content. Until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.